I never wanted this child. She's not ours. She'll never be a Reed. Those words, written in my mother's handwriting on a yellowed document hidden in a folder marked personal, do not open, shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. I'm Sophia Morales, 30 years old, and I run a $4.8 million consulting firm in Seattle with a corner office overlooking Elliott Bay and a team of 18 people who actually respect me. But 7 years ago, I was just the invisible daughter in a Portland family of lawyers, constantly compared to my perfect twin siblings, Marcus and Vanessa, working 2 jobs to afford community college while they partied at Stanford on my parents' dime. That folder, discovered during what I thought was a routine visit home, contained adoption papers, hospital records, and a heartbreaking letter from my biological mother that revealed the truth my parents, Richard and Diane Reed, had buried for 23 years. I wasn't their daughter. It was a transaction, a cover-up for their infertility, a prop to maintain their perfect image in Portland's legal elite. My hands shook so violently the papers scattered across the dusty attic floor, and in that moment every cruel comment, every withdrawn college fund, every dismissive look finally made devastating sense. Hello, beloved listeners. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. I'm always curious to know which corners of the world you're tuning in from. Let me know your city in the comments. Enjoy the story. What I did after discovering that folder destroyed my parents' perfect facade and gave me the family I actually deserve. Growing up in Portland's West Hills, I thought every family operated like mine, with unspoken hierarchies and conditional love. Richard Reed, my father, was a senior partner at Morrison & Reed, pulling in $850,000 annually. Diane Reed, my mother, served as a circuit court judge, her salary around $180,000. Then there were the Golden children, Marcus and Vanessa, fraternal twins born 2 years before they adopted me through a private arrangement they kept sealed. The twins had Richard's sharp features and Diane's auburn hair, while I had dark brown eyes, olive skin, and black hair that Diane once described as unfortunate for family portraits. Our house on Skyline Boulevard was a showcase property, 4,200 square feet with original hardwood floors and views of Mount Hood. Marcus and Vanessa occupied large bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, while I lived in the converted attic space, accessible only by a narrow staircase off the kitchen. Diane explained this by saying my room had character, but I understood the real message. The twins belonged prominently displayed, while I was tucked away out of sight during important dinner parties. Richard worked late most nights, arriving home around 9 p.m. smelling like scotch and printer toner, while Diane hosted book clubs and fundraisers, always introducing Marcus and Vanessa with pride, while I received brief mentions as our other daughter before conversations pivoted elsewhere. The inequality started early. Marcus and Vanessa attended Metropolitan Learning Center, a prestigious public school requiring applications, while I went to the neighborhood elementary. The twins received tutors for advanced math and science, $120 per session twice weekly. While my requests for help were met with suggestions to try harder, high school brought the cruelest comparison. Marcus and Vanessa both attended Lincoln High School, joining debate team, Model UN, and tennis club, their extracurriculars costing $1,200 annually per child. I attended Grant High School, joined the free newspaper, and worked at Starbucks 20 hours weekly, earning $9.25 per hour. Junior year, Marcus and Vanessa both scored $1,480 on their SATs after $3,000 worth of prep courses. I scored $1,390 after studying with library books, a score I was proud of until Diane asked why I couldn't have applied myself more. College applications destroyed any remaining illusion of equal treatment. Marcus applied to Stanford, Vanessa to Columbia, both with complete support from Richard and Diane, who hired a private college counselor at $400 per hour. I researched schools alone, targeting University of Oregon and Portland State for affordability. When Marcus and Vanessa received their acceptance letters, Richard opened champagne at $60 per bottle. When I asked about financial help for college, Richard explained carefully that Stanford's tuition was $54,000 annually, Columbia's $61,000, and they'd opened 529 college savings plans for the twins worth $187,000 each. For me, there was number 529 plan. No savings, no discussion. We've provided you with an excellent home and education through high school, Sophia, Richard said, not meeting my eyes. College is where you prove your independence. I worked 3 jobs my senior year, saving $8,400 by graduation. Enough for 1 year at Portland State commuting from home. But Diane suggested I find an apartment instead, since I'd be practically an adult. I found a studio for $650 monthly, a 400-square-foot space with a hot plate, and moved out 2 weeks after graduation. The twins left for their elite schools with tearful hugs and packed cars, while I left with a handshake from Richard. I worked 35 hours weekly while taking 15 credits, surviving on ramen at 22 cents per package. My advisor noticed I was always first to arrive and last to leave the computer lab, since I didn't own a laptop. She recommended scholarships for first-generation students. I spent Thanksgiving break alone writing 12 scholarship essays, while Marcus and Vanessa posted Instagram photos from Aspen, where the family had gone skiing, a trip I wasn't invited to. I won 3 scholarships totaling $7,500 for sophomore year. Years passed in this pattern. The twins launched careers with parental support, Marcus landing at a tech startup after Richard's introduction, Vanessa entering law school with a $50,000 contribution from Diane. I climbed slowly in marketing, switching agencies, my salary rising from $38,000 to $52,000 to $68,000. I attended family events maybe twice yearly, where conversations centered on Marcus's promotion or Vanessa's summer associate position, paying $3,500 weekly. I stopped attending most events, claiming work conflicts, building a life that didn't intersect with theirs. At 28, I received an offer that changed everything. Gregory Park, a Korean-American consultant who'd also been adopted, ran Peak Solutions, a boutique strategy consulting firm in Seattle. He recognized something in me during our first coffee meeting, a hunger for validation that went deeper than normal ambition. He offered me a position as senior consultant at $95,000 annually, plus bonuses. I accepted within 24 hours, packed my apartment into a U-Haul, and drove north to Seattle without telling my parents until I'd signed the lease on a 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill for $1,400 monthly. Seattle became my rebirth. Peak Solutions operated from a modest office in Pioneer Square, a team of 12 consultants who worked 60-hour weeks. Gregory paired me with experienced consultants, teaching me to analyze financial statements and present recommendations to skeptical executives. My first solo project came 4 months in, a supply chain optimization for a medical device manufacturer, generating $45 million annually, but losing $3 million yearly. I spent 2 weeks on site, reviewing purchase orders and building financial models that identified $2.8 million in recoverable annual losses. The CEO approved implementation immediately, Peak Solutions earning a $180,000 fee. Gregory rewarded me with a $27,000 bonus. I used $15,000 as down payment on a used BMW 3 Series and invested the remaining $12,000. My second year brought larger projects, my income jumping to $137,000 with bonuses. And I moved to a better apartment with in-unit laundry and a view of the Space Needle, $1,800 monthly. I also started therapy with Dr. Sarah Kwan, who specialized in family estrangement and adoption trauma, sessions costing $180 weekly. She asked questions I'd never considered, like why I felt obligated to maintain relationships that caused pain. My friendship with Jenna Cho, a UX designer at Amazon earning $165,000, became my anchor. We met doing laundry in our building, and within weeks we were grabbing dinner regularly, creating chosen family traditions, hosting Thanksgiving potlucks with other friends estranged from biological families. The partnership offer came during my 3rd year when I'd billed $840,000 in consulting fees, bringing Peak Solutions to $4.8 million annually. Gregory offered me 15% ownership for $125,000 paid over 3 years, making me a named partner with authority over hiring and strategy. My compensation restructured to $110,000 base plus 15% of profits distributed quarterly, meaning my annual income could hit $250,000 or more. I accepted immediately. Partnership changed everything. I started leading business development, winning projects through relationships. One client, an e-commerce platform generating $80 million annually, hired us for a $400,000 engagement after I presented at a tech summit. My equity distributions hit $42,000 my first quarter as partner, and I used that as down payment on a condo in Capitol Hill. $620,000 with $124,000 down, and a mortgage of $3,100 monthly. The folder discovery happened entirely by accident. I was in Portland for a client meeting and made the mistake of mentioning it to Diane, who insisted I stay at their house rather than a hotel. The house looked the same outside but felt emptier inside. Furniture rearranged to fill spaces where pieces had been sold. I slept in my old attic room, now a yoga studio. The second morning, I woke early for my meeting and noticed the attic access panel in the hallway. Ceiling was slightly ajar with the pull-down ladder extended. Curious, I climbed up with my phone flashlight, navigating boxes labeled by year. One box near the back was marked personal, do not open, in Diane's handwriting. I opened it. Inside were medical records, legal documents, and correspondence. The first document was a hospital birth record from Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center, showing a stillborn baby boy they'd named Michael Reed, death occurring 14 hours after delivery. The next paper was an adoption agreement between Richard and Diane Reed and a woman named Elena Morales, dated 3 months after the stillbirth. The agreement outlined terms where Elena, aged 19, unmarried, relinquished all parental rights to a female infant in exchange for $15,000. Attached was a handwritten letter from Elena addressed to my baby girl, explaining she was a nursing student whose family had disowned her, that she'd chosen adoption because she wanted her daughter to have opportunities she couldn't provide, and that she loved me more than words could express. Elena included medical history, noting she was Mexican-American from Jalisco, and closed by writing, "You are wanted, you are loved, and you are mine no matter what papers say otherwise." The papers beneath Elena's letter destroyed me. Diane had kept a journal documenting years of observations about me, starting when I was 4. The earliest entry read, "Sophia's coloring wrong for family photos. Too dark. Guests comment." Entries continued through the years. Sophia struggles with reading, probably genetic limitation. Sophia's body developing wrong, too curvy, not read elegance. Sophia accepted to only state schools. Embarrassing after twins Stanford and Columbia, clearly genetic ceiling. The final entry, dated 6 months before I'd moved to Seattle, read, "Sophia turns 28 next month. Original adoption agreement obligation ended at 18. No longer required to maintain relationship beyond minimal contact. She served purpose of covering our infertility. Time to focus resources on actual Reed children who carry our legacy." I photographed every document with my phone. 47 photos in total, uploading everything to my secure cloud drive before returning documents to the folder exactly as I'd found them. I climbed down, gathered my bags, left my key on the kitchen counter, and walked to my rental car. Richard emerged, asking if I wanted coffee, and I said no, thank you, in a voice so calm it scared me. I drove to my client meeting, sat through 4 hours of analysis, and performed flawlessly, despite my mind screaming. I called Jenna from the road back to Seattle, voice finally breaking as I admitted I'd discovered something that changed everything. She arrived at my condo that evening with Thai takeout and wine, and I showed her the photos. She read through everything in silence, her expression shifting from confused to horrified to furious. When she finished, she wrapped me in a hug while I cried harder than I had since childhood. "They never wanted me," I sobbed. "I was just a prop, a cover-up for their dead baby." Jenna held me tighter. "That's on them, not you. You were a child. They failed you, not the other way around." Dr. Kwan's emergency session the next morning helped me create an action plan. She validated my feelings, explaining that discovering you're adopted as an adult is fundamentally destabilizing, but discovering you were essentially bought as a replacement child compounds that trauma exponentially. We discussed options, confronting Richard and Diane immediately versus taking time to locate Elena first, whether to tell Marcus and Vanessa how to protect myself legally and emotionally. I hired a private investigator, Lauren Mitchell, who charged $250 per hour. I gave Lauren everything: Elena's full name, her age making her 42 now, the hospital records, the detail about nursing student at OHSU. Lauren called 3 days later with findings. Elena Morales had completed her nursing degree, worked in Oregon for 18 years, then relocated to Spokane, Washington 5 years ago. She currently worked at Providence Sacred Heart Medical Center in pediatric oncology, earning approximately $82,000 annually. Lauren found no marriage records, but public records showed Elena living with 2 other individuals in their 20s, likely her children, making me a half-sibling to people who'd never known I existed. Most important, Elena had registered with every adoption reunion database available, updating her information for 30 years, including a recent post stating searching for daughter born March 15. I have never stopped looking for you. Please contact me. Lauren provided Elena's phone number, email, and current address. I stared at Elena's number for 3 days before Jenna staged an intervention, refusing to leave until I made the call. I dialed at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, hands shaking, and Elena answered on the second ring. Hello? I forced words out. Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm calling about an adoption in Portland 30 years ago. I think you might be my biological mother. Silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then I heard crying, deep sobs that turned into laughter, and Elena's voice came back breathless. Oh my God, is this real? Are you really her? My baby girl. We talked for 3 hours, Elena asking 1,000 questions about my life while I asked about hers. Elena explained she'd been 19 in nursing school when she got pregnant. Her parents gave her an ultimatum: abort or leave their home. She'd moved into a women's shelter, continued classes, and planned to raise me herself. Then she went into early labor at 26 weeks, and I was born weighing 2 pounds 11 ounces. Spending 2 months in the NICU, while Elena faced $180,000 in medical bills. Bernard Katz, an attorney, approached her offering to cover all expenses plus $15,000 if she'd sign adoption papers. She'd refused at first, but the hospital was threatening collections, and she was 19 with no support and a premature infant who might not survive. She'd signed sobbing, held me once before transferring custody, and written that letter as her only allowed communication. Elena's life after had been survival, followed by rebuilding. She'd finished nursing school, worked in pediatric units, married briefly, had 2 children, Miguel and Carmen, now 22 and 20, before divorcing. She'd moved to Spokane 5 years ago but never stopped searching, checking adoption registries monthly, even hiring a private investigator once who'd found nothing. She'd kept a box of things for me: baby clothes from those NICU months, photos, medical bracelets, all saved for the day she hoped would come. When I told her about Diane's journal entries, Elena's voice turned fierce. That is not a reflection of you. That's their sickness. You are perfect. You are perfect. And they wasted the gift of knowing you. We arranged to meet 2 weeks later in Centralia, halfway between Seattle and Spokane. I brought Jenna, and Elena brought Miguel and Carmen. Elena looked exactly like her photos, 5'4" with dark hair graying at the temples, wearing jeans and a sweater, her face breaking into the most genuine smile I'd ever seen directed at me. We hugged in the parking lot, Elena crying and touching my face like she couldn't believe I was real. Inside the coffee shop, Elena showed me the box of saved items, tiny onesies, a hospital bracelet reading Baby Girl Morales, photos of teenage Elena holding her pregnant belly. Miguel and Carmen were warm and curious, including me instantly in their sibling dynamic, inviting me to Spokane for Thanksgiving. 7 months after discovering the folder, I received an email from Marcus with subject line "Family Emergency. Need your help." The email was short: Sophia. Mum and Dad are in serious financial trouble. Dad's lawsuit settlement left them almost broke, and they're facing foreclosure on the house in 90 days. Vanessa and I can't cover this. We need $180,000 to save the house. Can you help? It's family. The number felt poetic, exactly 12 times what they'd paid Elena for me. I sent the email to Lauren with instructions to investigate thoroughly. Lauren's report arrived 4 days later, 22 pages confirming Marcus's claims but adding context. Richard and Diane's house was worth $1.2 million, but they'd refinanced repeatedly. Current mortgage balance $780,000 with monthly payments of $5,200 that their income couldn't cover. They'd missed 3 payments, triggering foreclosure. Lauren found they'd taken a $95,000 home equity line to cover Marcus's failed investments and Vanessa's bar exam attempts. Plus, they'd sold $430,000 worth of retirement accounts over 4 years to maintain lifestyle. They'd burned through $500,000 rather than downsize. I sat with the report for a week, discussing with Dr. Kwan and Jenna, finally calling Elena to ask what she thought. Elena listened, then said carefully, Mija. People who treat you as disposable when it's convenient don't suddenly value you when they need something. They want your money, not your presence. If you give it, you're not buying their love. You're funding their continued belief that you exist to serve them. I started drafting my response and called Marcus requesting a family meeting. We scheduled for the following Saturday at the house in Portland, all 5 of us. I drove to Portland that Saturday with Jenna, arriving at 10 a.m. carrying a leather portfolio. The house looked shabbier, paint peeling, garden overgrown. Richard answered, looking older, and led me to the living room where Diane, Marcus, and Vanessa waited. The room felt staged for sympathy, family photos prominently displayed, tissues on the coffee table. Marcus launched into his pitch immediately. PowerPoint slides explaining the foreclosure timeline and the exact $180,000 needed, breaking it into monthly payments if I financed it as a personal loan. Vanessa added emotional appeals about losing the family home, childhood memories, their parents' golden years being destroyed. I let Marcus finish his entire presentation, then opened my portfolio and pulled out a printed copy of the adoption agreement, placing it on the coffee table. "Before we discuss money," I said, voice calm, "I think we should discuss this document I found in your attic 7 months ago." Diane's face went white immediately, her hand flying to her throat. Marcus and Vanessa both reached for the document, confused, reading the legal language about Elena Morales relinquishing parental rights and the Reeds paying $15,000 for an infant girl. "What is this?" Marcus asked. "That's the adoption agreement from 30 years ago," I said, documenting how Richard and Diane purchased me from a 19-year-old nursing student after their biological son was stillborn. I pulled out Michael Reed's birth and death certificate, placing it beside the adoption agreement. Vanessa stammered, "You're adopted. We didn't know." I nodded. "They never told me either until I found these papers. But wait, there's more." I pulled out printed pages of Diane's journal entries and began reading selected excerpts aloud. Sophia's coloring wrong for family photos. Genetic limitation. Good schools wasted. Not worth college investment. No longer required to maintain relationship beyond minimal contact. I read them dispassionately, watching Diane shrink into the couch and Richard stare at his hands. "These are your mother's words, documenting every way I failed to be the replacement child she wanted for Michael. 23 years of observations confirming I wasn't really family, just a cover story for infertility." Richard finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "It wasn't like that, Sophia. We loved you. I cut him off. "You just what? Documented my inadequacy for 23 years. Refused to help with college. Called me a regret in writing." I pulled out my phone, showing photos of every document. "I have all of this backed up. And I've found Alina, by the way. My biological mother, who's been searching for me for 30 years, who lives in Spokane as a pediatric oncology nurse, who has 2 other children who welcomed me immediately. Elena told me she signed adoption papers because she was 19, alone, and facing $180,000 in NICU bills. You paid $15,000 for me, and now you want $180,000 back. That's poetic." Marcus tried salvaging the situation. "Sophia, I understand you're hurt, but Mum and Dad are still our parents," I interrupted. "They raised you. They warehoused me, and they're not facing homelessness. They're facing consequences of spending $430,000 maintaining a lifestyle while subsidizing your failures." I stood up, closing my portfolio. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm not giving you any money. Not $180,000, not $180, nothing. You'll sell this house, downsize appropriately, and learn to live within your means like I did at 18. And all of you will delete my contact information after I leave, because we're done. I'm not your daughter. I'm not their sister. I'm the adoptee you bought and discarded. And I'm choosing family that actually wants me." Diane found her voice. Panicked. "Sophia, please, you can't just abandon us." I turned back. "You abandoned me first. When I needed college help, emotional support, parents who saw me as equal to your biological children. You wrote you were no longer required to maintain a relationship with me beyond minimal contact once. I turned 18. Congratulations, you're getting 0 contact." I walked toward the door and Marcus followed. "Sophia, wait." I shook my head. "Lauren Mitchell, my attorney, will send cease and desist letters to all 4 of you Monday morning. Any contact attempt will result in harassment charges." "I'm serious, Marcus. Delete my number, because the next time any of you reach out, you'll be dealing with lawyers." I left through the front door, feeling lighter despite tears streaming down my face, and Jenna met me at the car. We drove back to Seattle while I cried through the entire 3 hours, grief mixing with relief, mixing with rage, until all I felt was exhaustion. Lauren sent cease and desist letters Monday morning, commanding Richard, Diane, Marcus, and Vanessa to refrain from any contact, enforceable through civil harassment statutes. I blocked all their numbers, set social media to private, and instructed Peak Solutions receptionists that 4 specific names were never to be connected through to me. The fallout was predictable. Richard and Diane's house entered foreclosure, sold at auction for $890,000, barely covering their mortgage. They moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in Beaverton, $1,600 monthly, that consumed most of Richard's pension. Diane took a job as a legal document reviewer, earning $35 per hour. Marcus got laid off and moved back in with them, sleeping on their couch. Vanessa stayed at her firm but worked 80-hour weeks for $85,000, barely covering $2,100 monthly student loan payments, moving into a house share with 3 roommates at age 30. Meanwhile, my life with Elena's family deepened into genuine belonging. I spent Thanksgiving in Spokane. Elena's house full of extended family welcoming me as Isabella's granddaughter, without questions. Elena's tamales were incredible, her mole recipe passed down from her great-grandmother. We played loteria after dinner, and when I won a round, everyone cheered. Christmas brought similar warmth, gifts costing maybe $30 each but carrying thought and care. Carmen gave me a vintage leather journal. Miguel and his girlfriend pulled money for a Spotify subscription. Elena gave me a shadow box containing the NICU photos and hospital bracelet, the first family heirlooms I'd ever received that felt like mine. The new year brought professional triumph. Peak Solutions landed a $1.2 million engagement, and Gregory promoted me to managing partner, setting my base salary at $140,000 plus profit sharing. I called Elena first with the news, and she screamed so loud her colleagues asked if everything was okay. Jenna took me to dinner at Canlis, Seattle's most expensive restaurant, where we spent $380 on a tasting menu and toasted to Sophia, who proved family isn't genetics, it's who shows up. I filed paperwork for a legal name change. Sophia Morales-Reed, hyphenated to acknowledge both histories, even though only one family wanted me. Peak Solutions thrived, our revenue hitting $2 million annually, and I bought a weekend cabin on Whidbey Island for $340,000. Elena visited with Miguel and Carmen, and we took the ferry together, played board games by the fire, and she told me stories about her mother, Isabella. Family makes mistakes, Elena said. The difference is whether they acknowledge the harm and work to repair it, or whether they double down on cruelty and blame you for noticing. The Reed family never acknowledged anything. One tracked their continued decline through public records. Richard and Diane downsizing twice more, Marcus cycling through jobs, Vanessa eventually taking an in-house counsel position at $68,000. None attempted contact. After the cease and desist letters, 3 years after discovering the folder, Peak Solutions received acquisition interest for $12 million. One negotiated hard, protecting staff, and personally secured a deal where I'd stay as West Coast Regional Director, earning $220,000 plus equity worth $800,000. My 15% ownership meant I received $1.8 million from the acquisition. And after taxes, I netted $1.1 million that I invested across portfolios and a college fund for Carmen. I used $200,000 to buy Elena a house, outright cash purchase, a 3-bedroom Craftsman in Spokane. She cried, saying it was too much. But I explained the Reeds paid $15,000 for me and spent nothing after, while Elena gave me life and spent 30 years searching. So $200,000 was actually inadequate. She framed the deed next to the NICU photos, telling everyone her daughter bought the house. Miguel and Carmen lived with her rent-free while finishing school, and she started fostering teenage girls from troubled homes, offering the support she'd once needed. Richard died of a heart attack at 67, obituary listing his career but making no mention of personal life beyond survived by wife Diane, son Marcus, and daughter Vanessa. I learned through a Google alert, read it once, and felt nothing except relief. I didn't attend, sent no flowers, made no contact. Diane followed 5 years later, dementia in her final months. Marcus handled both estates, assets insufficient to cover final expenses, both dying with negative net worth. My life continued upward. The acquisition earnout hit maximum value, netting me an additional $600,000, and I invested in a multifamily property, generating $6,200 monthly rental income. My total compensation exceeded $400,000 annually by age 37. The money wasn't about competition anymore, it was about options. Like when Elena mentioned wanting to visit Mexico and I surprised the entire family with flights and hotels for 2 weeks in Jalisco. $15,000 spent without hesitation because these were my people. Jenna married her girlfriend in a ceremony I helped plan. $20,000 budget I covered as my gift. Carmen graduated nursing school specializing in neonatal care, and Elena sobbed through the ceremony while I held her hand. The folder that had detonated my life sat in a safety deposit box. Now, preserved, but no longer necessary. I'd scanned every document, backed up files, and consulted Lauren about whether I needed original, which I didn't. I thought about burning it in ceremony, but ultimately kept it. Not as wound, but as a reminder that truth matters. That documentation matters. That my instincts about being unwanted hadn't been paranoia, but perception of reality. Some people need to forget trauma to move forward, and some people need to remember exactly what they survived to understand what they've overcome. The lesson I carried forward was this: don't wait for people who discarded you to suddenly recognize your value. Because their inability to see you was never about your inadequacy, it was about their brokenness. Build a life that proves your worth to yourself first. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your existence without conditions. And understand that the family you create through choice is more real than family you were born or bought into. Money helped, certainly, but the deeper healing came from Elena's unconditional acceptance, from Jenna's fierce loyalty, from Miguel and Carmen's immediate inclusion, from every person who chose to see me and value me. That was the empire I'd built. Not just consulting fees and real estate, but a network of people who made me feel fundamentally wanted for the first time in my life. Thanks for staying through this entire story. What would you have done after finding that folder? Have you ever had to walk away from family who treated you as disposable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries, choosing yourself, and building the life you actually deserve. See you in the next one.